Hi, it's Elf from Anella Visuals here, and today I wanted to just break down a little bit of a workflow on how to create some trees inside of Maya. Um, I feel like paint effects have been slightly overlooked um, in over the last, well, since they've been in Maya really, and you know, though they are not sort of considered to be sort of industry standard in terms of the quality of them, I do think that there is definitely a place for them. Um, so yeah, I had a student today asking how to go about creating some trees inside of Maya, and yeah, I went through the process and how to do that in Paint Effects, and I thought that would be a valuable tutorial just to break down because it's pretty swift, and the only thing really we need to do to get it working inside of Arnold is convert the Paint Effects and apply some some nice textures. So yeah, that's what we're going to do. Going to be using some Quixel textures. So the textures that I used, I will put a link to in the description below. But I used some oak leaves, these ones here, and I also used an oak bark as well. And like I said, I'll put the asset links in the description for those. So yeah, this is what we have, and we've also got some. Let me hide some of the other bits. Also got some subtle animation on here as well. Okay, so yeah, without further ado, let's get to it. So I'm going to start a new scene, and the first thing I'm going to do is change my preferences and make sure that I'm working in meters. I'm going to hit save, and then I'm just going to bring in a scale reference. So I'm going to go to content browser, and I'm going to modeling people, and then I'm going to bring in just one of these people so that I've got a reference for the size of this thing. Yeah, next I'm going to go to generate, get brush, and then I'm going to scroll down, and I'm going to come down to where it says trees mesh, and we've got lots of different sort of starting points in here. They are all very customizable and very procedural. So, you know, just because it's called an oak tree, there's a lot of customization that you can do to modify that. I'm going to use the oak white medium, and so I'm going to double click on that. I'm going to close this now, and you'll notice that your cursor has changed to this pencil. If you hold the B key and left mouse click and drag, you can change the cursor size here. So this is how you're going to create your tree. And what I tend to do is just a sort of short, sharp left click and drag up, and then let go. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to left mouse button click, drag up, and then let go. And you'll notice that the curve we've drawn is just a short line like this. Yeah, so in our outliner we've got the stroke and the curve, and you can sort of rotate these around. But what you will find is that this is not renderable until you actually convert the paint effects to polygons. So if I change my viewport to the Arnold renderer, and then let's put in a little physical sky, and just to get rid of the sky in our background, I'm going to scroll down in the attributes, go to viewport, turn the sky radius down to 0, and then if I hit the play button, and this is currently using the CPU. Yeah. Okay, you can see there's sort of like a weird outline there, and we've got this person, but there's no shading or anything happening, and that's because we need to convert it. So select your tree, go up to modify, down to convert, and paint effects to polygons. And if you go to the options, by default this will say 100,000. If you pop in 0 there, it will not limit the amount of polygons. So that's okay for a single tree, because it won't have gone up to 100,000 anyway. Unlikely. So hit apply, and now we've got a tree. The tree has automatically had some textures applied to it. These are just these are Maya textures, and if we have a little look at the Hypershade window and graph our materials, you'll see that these are just Phong shaders. So we've got a leaf shader and a bark shader. So we're going to swap these over to be standard surfaces. So in this dark grey area, I'm going to hit the tab key, and I'm going to start typing AI standard surface, and I'm going to rename this to leaf, and then what I'm going to do is hold the right mouse button over this shader, go to select objects, and then hold the right mouse button over the new standard surface and assign material to viewport selection. They're now grey, so that's being applied, and I can now delete those nodes there. And I can do the same for the bark. So AI standard, call this AI bark, hold the right mouse button, select objects, and then assign material. Okay, so we've put our sort of placeholder shaders. I'm just going to give it a save, just in case we do have a crash for whatever reason. Right, so we've got our placeholder shaders, and before we go about applying our textures, now would be the time that if you wanted to make any modifications to the tree, we would do it now before we do any of the UV stuff. So if you come over to your attribute editor and go to the name of your tree down here, so mine's oak white medium, and then you've got all of these different options that you can modify. So for the most part, you're probably going to be in tubes, and then you've got creation, growth, and behavior. So in the creation, we've got the things that will be modifying the sort of overall creation of the main sort of the main trunk, and you can change the length, etc. You can go through these and you can modify whatever. You can turn off leaves, turn off twigs, you can modify the branches, twigs, etc. Everything's procedural, but I'm not going to mess with this for a minute. I'm just going to leave it as it is. But if you did want to modify it, now would be the time to do it. And when you're happy with that, and you have modified, what we will what we will do next is sort out the shaders for the leaves and the trunk. I will just take these leaves off this center trunk because that looks a bit weird. So I think I'm going to go to tubes, and then we will find, I think it's under growth, leaves, and then instead of on all, I will switch that to on secondary branches only. Okay. Right, so I'm going to bring my Quixel textures in, and I will use a file node, file texture, and I'm going to browse. I'm just going to set my project a minute so I don't have to keep going back there. So leaves, and I'm not gonna go through and plug all of these textures in. I'm just for a minute going to be plugging the opacity and the albedo just to show you that process. So first and foremost, let's plug in the opacity. Take the out color, go into the opacity slot, and yeah, what you can see now on the leaves is that we've got our atlas being mapped across the leaf, but this is not what we want. So we go and have a look at our UV editor and select our leaves. Let's see, am I still rendering? Oh. This square here is one of our leaves. So at the moment our whole atlas is being mapped across one of the leaves. So we wanna confront that a little bit. And the way that I would go about doing this is if we hold right mouse button and go to UV shell, we've got all of our different shells on top of one another here. So if we select over all of them and we say unstack shells, that will give you this sort of grid pattern. And now we've got this grid pattern, we can, we can stack up different sort of rows or columns of these, and then move and scale those and put them on top of the atlas, if you know what I mean. So I'm just going to take like a strip down here. If I have a look at the tree now, you can see which ones that has selected, and there's a good sort of spread. It's a good random number. Okay, so with those selected, I'm going to go and stack shells, and that will give me one stack, and I'm just going to go through and repeat the process until I'm probably not going to do all of the leaves on the atlas, but I will do probably 7 or 8 different stacks to give it a good amount of variation. Okay, that's 6. 7. Let's do these ones. Okay, and I can just about see my sort of UV square over here. So I'm going to scale these down a bit. And now I'm going to position and scale these so that they just sort of wrap around the leaves, and making sure that every part of the leaf is in UV shells, and I'm just going to get going to get a good mix of leaves here. The more you have, the more convincing it will be. It's a little bit tedious, but it's not too bad. And it'll be worth it. Like these holy ones down here, been eaten or something. Okay, that's all of them. So now if I come in, have a look over here, you can see that it's no longer the atlas, and it's just those single leaves that are across the shells now. If we go up here to render and turn our viewport to viewport 2.0, we go to the options, and we can tell the transparency algorithm to use the alpha cut algorithm, and that helps us just to sort of visualize things a bit more interactively in the viewport. So that's looking good. I'm going to save it. Back to my hypershade window, and I'll just bring in the albedo texture, and this time I'm just going to drag it in from my file browser. And I'm going to delete this place2d texture node and plug this one in. Just saves having to repeat the process. And then take the base color and plug that in. I could go through and plug the roughness in, etc. But as I said, I'm just going to leave that for a second. And then with the bark, just going to bring the albedo and maybe a normal for that as well. And same again, I will just plug in my place2d texture node, take my albedo, and in between my normal texture, I'll put an AI normal map, take the out color into the input and the out value into the normal camera. And I'm just going to make sure that my color space is set to raw on that normal map. Okay. So just scale this up, hide. And I'm just going to check to see my render device. I'm going to set mine to GPU for a minute. And let's just increase the intensity just so we can see the scene a little bit more clearly. Just going to increase the roughness on the bark because it looks a bit strange. Okay, so that's plugging in the textures, and if you wanted to get a little bit of animation going on, we can go back into the, if we right click up here and go back into the oak white medium node and come down to the bottom to where it says behavior, and we can go to turbulence, for instance, and we can turn the turbulence type to something like tree wind. And what I tend to do is right click in the X column of the turbulence offset and hit set key, and let's just see if this is working. Let's put a number in here and set. It's a slightly strange one, this, because if I take the value out now, so maybe the same value, it's now animating, so it's I've just set a key in here, and it's I've had to set a key at frame number 1 and frame 200, but they're actually have the same value now, and it's still sort of animating. So I'm not, not 100% on why that is the case, but that is something that has been happening. So is my cache going to allow me to do this? Yes, it is. So you have some different options in here. We've got turbulence, frequency, and speed. And so you can sort of decrease any or increase any of these to get your sort of the effect that you would like to get. I'm just going to let that cache back a little bit. And then let's just play that first little bit and see how frantic that is, but you can obviously dial that back. We can turn turbulence speed down, maybe the overall turbulence as well, to say 0.1. Yeah, and what you find is you probably got some quite nice animation going on with this tree now. So yeah, I mean, I think, the paint effects trees are actually really versatile. They're all procedural based. You can hook in textures that you use from Quixel or other places, and I think I will do this in another video, but you can also export these as stand-ins, so that you can instance lots of different trees across the scene and have minimal performance hit. So I think that video I will follow up over the next couple of weeks. But yeah, just want to say thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you again next time. Cool. See you later.